In this session, ClearBlade founder and CEO Eric Simone, whom you met, and I'll just say, shh, also known as the Godfather for some of us that know, is going to talk about real-world use cases for how GenAI and Edge AI drive action in companies today. So, Eric, welcome to the stage, sir.
Good afternoon, folks. How are you doing today? All right, so the missing link. It's a big title here. How to turn GenAI and AI data into action. So, look, as CEO of ClearBlade, I would be fired if I didn't say AI or GenAI at least 20, 30 times a day, or in every post, right? My board has made a mandate to mention these things. And as I mentioned earlier, my poor CTO, Aaron, over there, has to listen to me say, you know, hey, we've got to build GenAI into our products. So I'll be honest with you, though. As I went through preparing for this, I struggled with some things. You know, I know a lot about IoT. I know a lot about edge computing and software. I know a bit about AI, and I know probably no more than you about GenAI at this point. So I need you to bear with me this afternoon because I'm going to take you on a journey. One I didn't expect. I'm going to take you a journey inside my brain. And we're going to kind of follow the logic. It's a scary place to be, trust me. And part of why I did this is because I actually tried to use GenAI to create my presentation, to create the bullet points. And as I was going through that process, I spent a couple days on this, and it just fell flat for me. I can't get up here and speak on a topic that I didn't research, that I'm using generated words. I don't know if any of you tried this if you're an expert in something or even knowledgeable, have you tried to use GenAI to create text? Yeah, I see a few people. And it helps, but it helps kind of get your brain started. It falls flat. So I'm like, I can't get up there and do a GenAI presentation that's generated by AI. I've got to dive in. So bear with me as I take you through my journey a little bit here today. All right. So first, let's start with just news. I don't know about you, but I'm constantly reading topics in the news. And I'm going to go through a few of these. Of course, we all know about OpenAI and the release of GPT 4.0. O is for Omni, by the way, if you didn't know that. I've actually paid for it. I'm using it. I'm fascinated by the multimodal input stuff. I'm fascinated by the videos. That was all the rage, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago when it launched. So I consumed as much information on GPT 4.0 as I could and started really practicing with it. So there's a big buzz around that. In the news, I think it's real interesting what AI is doing to news and news stories. I think you can start to see that the people that are generating real news and then bots or GenAI that are generating not so real news, or they're just kind of scraping and creating, and it's upending the way that we consume the news and distribute the news these days. Scientists are using GenAI to answer complex questions in physics. So I went down that rabbit hole for a while and started reading a bunch about how physics is being transformed by AI and GenAI. Now, actors, right? We've heard a lot about this. I don't know if you remember when the actors struck and Meta and AI companies recruited actors, striking actors, to train AI. And then, you know, you get the whole GPT 4.0 and you get Scarlett Johansson was not real happy, right? We started making the comparisons to her. And, you know, what's going to happen to the arts as we start to use some of these new technologies to take over the jobs that actors had? Maybe actors have started to make too much money, become too famous. I don't think they're going to be replaced, but it's definitely shocking the industry. And then we've got elections, which this is worldwide elections. I'm not going to touch elections with a 10-foot pole here, but let's just say it's concerning, right? How it's going to influence the way people vote, the way people believe things, the outcomes of these things possibly. So there's a lot of impact there. And public safety. Another area, one that we're somewhat involved with, where when you're working with drones and you're taking images from drones and you have police that are using drones. I believe this is in Chula Vista, California, where they're using drones pretty heavily. It's a fascinating article. By the way, these slides, I've got links to every one of these afterwards if you folks want to follow some of my pattern of brain thinking about this stuff and ingesting this stuff and say, okay, how do I talk about AI and GenAI and where do we go from here? And then there's Microsoft. This made a big buzz, right? Recall. Recall everything you do on your PC, right? And I'm going to show my age now. My brain went to Total Recall and Arnold Schwarzenegger. To me, this is terrifying. I don't want anybody hacking in to my computer to see everything I've done over a day, over a week, right? And if you really dig into it, it's in I think it's in a SQLite database sitting on your laptop. That's not too hard to get to, right? And of course, now, yeah, Hacker Tool extracts all the data collected by Windows' new Recall AI. And actually, if I kept up with this, even this week, now Microsoft is kind of backpedaling a little bit, right? And saying, hey, we're going to make it optional for you to capture all your data. You know, we talk a lot about security and privacy. I do believe in this new world, it's not, I wouldn't say over, but I'd just say close to over. I think we're now sharing so much. I think it pays to watch what you share and how you use your information. But you know, these things are going to accelerate over the next several years. And then this was just the other day, Apple Intelligence is offering the company's new GenAI offering on their devices, right? That's coming out. They finally kind of stepped into the ring and said, here's what we're doing. But they're saying you're going to keep it all private, right? So again, you'll have this device now that knows a lot about you, that will respond to you in a human-like way and do lots of interesting things. So I'm just consuming all this stuff saying, okay, now how do we apply that to what I'm going to talk about? How do we apply it to our company? How do we use this information? I even went and interviewed my own employees that are doing AI within the company. Said, what do you think about this, right? Tell me, am I crazy? Am I concerned about the right things? And you get varying different opinions. And trust me, I'm not going to go in to how we create these Gen AI things. I'm not going to go into the detail. I'm going to spare you with that because I'll just be regurgitating what my folks told me, and it's stuff that you can look up. I'm going to try to link how do we marry this new world of AI and Gen AI into traditional IoT and edge and things that we do. And I have to put Elon up here. You just can't avoid him, right? XAI secures $6 billion in financing. I'm not jealous. It's Elon Musk. I mean, $6 billion for a startup is a lot of money, but it's Elon, right? And there's no denying what he's been able to do with Tesla and SpaceX and others. But it just starts, my brain starts to go to, is this just a self-fulfilling, you know, just get into the media, talk about AI, get your VC buddies to talk about AI, let's get this valuation up and let's raise a bunch of money. Maybe that's the way the game's played, and now let's go do something really interesting with it. But it's this kind of arms race that's going on that I find fascinating, but does that mean the rest of us aren't playing the game? Like, if I'm not Elon, do I not get to play? Do I need $6 billion to kind of do what I want to do? So again, this is what my brain does. So where do I go? And then my brain went a little further. I'm like, well, what about topics like artificial general intelligence? How many folks have heard of this, right? AGI. So this is when we start talking about AI getting smarter than humans. And I'm seeing a lot of stuff on LinkedIn. I'm seeing a lot of people starting to spout this stuff. And I have questions. I don't know how you measure that AI is smarter than a human. Maybe there's some people here that have some strong opinions. I actually started reading a book a couple weeks ago called Superintelligence. It was written in 2016, I think. So I could start to educate myself on where we're going or where we think we're going. But I'm going to start to look at other experts too and what they're saying, not just Elon. So what defines human intelligence? You know, it keeps shifting. There used to be the Turing test, right? And can you beat chess? That's already been proven to be easy. Now we keep moving the bar. But just we say that it's going to be smarter than any human around the end of next year. By whose definition, right? And what is superintelligence, right? Are we going to create a superintelligence of machines and then we start, I don't have a Terminator slide, but I could have done that. Are we going to create Skynet? And gosh, please don't use the term sentient with me and AI yet. I mean, at all. This is math. Like, please, the SAS people that are in here, I'm going to talk AI and SAS. There's really strong math people, one that was just up stage here before the break, that will calm us down. And I think it was Aaron that said, well, couldn't we just pull the plug and then we stop it? I'm like, well, yeah, that's a good point. If we just take the energy away, does it stop? So yeah, again, what is AGI? And I'm like, all right, so there's a guy that, I don't know if any of you folks know who Grady Booch is, IBM fellow, right? So I actually have met Grady a few times back in my object-oriented days. And Grady doesn't pull any punches. I think he says what Musk says about superintelligence is bat, bleep, crazy. So there's other strong opinions by other professionals that are deeper in this than I. And Grady's a pioneer in the object-oriented space from the 80s and 90s. And I look to, so I'm like a deer in the headlights, right? This is Total Recall again. I'm like, okay, what do I do with all this data? So I'm like, all right, let's bring it back down. Let's back up and start reading some other things to ground yourself. And of course, I ran into yet another godfather. This one's the godfather of AI. This guy's earned his title as godfather. I'm grateful to Kevin for giving me the title of godfather of Edge. But if you look up Sir Geoffrey Hinton, he's got a PhD, I believe, in computer science. He's one of the pioneers of artificial neural networks. He's also got a degree in cognitive psychology. And when he says there isn't a consensus on what artificial general intelligence means, that I'm going to lean towards him with his experience. I think he was at Google most recently, and he quit over some concerns and is somewhere else. But there's another great guy to read up on what to think about this. So I'm godfather to the godfather. I'm going to sit down with the guy and make him an offer he can't refuse. We're going to have an alliance here, and I'm going to let Sir Geoffrey Hinton guide me in my thinking around AI. All right, and Cisco's in the room, right? Erica's here somewhere. Not picking on Cisco, by the way. I just picked up another article that said Cisco closes $28 billion acquisition of Splunk, and Splunk had tons of revenue, right? So it made sense. But the part that confuses me a little bit is, okay, Splunk's AI will benefit from Cisco's massive amounts of data. Okay, I don't deny that. But whose data and what data? I'm assuming this is network data from Cisco's routers. Maybe it's how we can do optimized networks or autonomous networks. Self-healing networks I heard earlier today. And what data? This is what always confused me. Everyone talks about this massive amount of data acquisition, and I have no doubt it's valuable. Right? GenAI, big GenAI models and large language models need to be built with massive amounts of data. But I've also read that what we've done so far is we've already scraped the entire internet up to this point. So we're using all the stuff that we generated with the internet. We've got that data. So now how do we differentiate? How does OpenAI differentiate from what Google's doing, right? And again, there'll be people that can tell me, but the more I read, I'm still not clear on these things. So will the AI revolution be dominated by the very large companies? Or again, I sit here as little old ClearBlade, right? Are we out of the mix? Like, what do I do? What do I do with this information? What do we do with my company? I don't know if any of you are thinking of the same thing. It's like, where do we play in this big race? I'm not Google. I'm not OpenAI. I'm not Elon Musk. Don't want to be, but I'm not him, right? So what happens when we run out of data? So again, I'm reading some interesting things like we're generating all this new data artificially, the synthetic data. What happens when we run out of fresh data? So then I'm going to take you a little further in my brain, and I promise to back up. Then I start thinking, well, what analogy could I draw? What about my data, right? What about my people? It's my microcosm of what ClearBlade does. What about my machines or my customers' machines? That's my proprietary data now. This is not stuff that people can scrape off the internet. And what about my knowledge? This comprises my knowledge. How can I leverage this in concert with these large language models? And I think we've heard a little bit of it today. One of the reasons I love coming to this event is some of these questions are starting to get a little bit clearer in my head by listening to other people talk about what they're doing with it, how you combine proprietary data with large language model data and start to come up with interesting solutions. All right, I go a little bit deeper here, and then I go into a tangent, and then I come back home, I'm promising. So then I read a paper from Rice University around self-consuming models. Go mad. I'm like, what is mad? And it's a term, if you want to impress your friends at a cocktail party or chase them away, use the term model autophagy disorder. What it means is when you're consuming synthetic data or self-generated data, and they did this study with imagery, right? So they did images, and they had images create new images based on the existing data and self-consume each loop. The models tend to degrade. The models, they call it hallucinations. In this case, they call it this self-consuming loop that it now accentuates the artifacts, and you start to see that the images that are being created get worse and worse and worse, right? So it started me thinking, what happens when we start generating more data than is actually human data or created data? And this is in the paper. This is the one that I read, this published paper and peer-reviewed paper that said there will soon be more synthetic data than real data on the internet. And that got me thinking a little bit further. So, okay, without enough fresh real data, future models are doomed to have their quality or diversity decrease. And then I started going, oh no, like what happens? So I played this little game in my head. So what if the internet started in 1920? Just follow me here. And we're now in 1950. And we've now reached the point where synthetic data is more prevalent or being created at a faster pace than the data I just consumed of the last 30 years. And now I'm going to turn GenAI loose and create new music. So follow me here. We're only in 1950, so like, maybe 1955, say Elvis is going. Would music that sounds like Led Zeppelin be created with the data that we've already had? Would music from, help me folks, come on, people my age in the group? Fleetwood Mac, right. Would we get Fleetwood Mac? This one's tough for any Canadians in the group.
This is tragically
yes, yes. Underrated, awesome band, one of my favorites of all time. See, Gord's no longer with us. Would we get Pearl Jam? Would we get, okay, this one's a little personal, Rage Against the Machine. I went to school with the man in the yellow hat. Mr. Tom Morello went to Libertyville High School in Illinois. So I always have to find a way to put him in there. I know Tom. He was a better musician than I was. Would we get Tool? The reason I put Tool up there, the guy on the left also went to high school with me. So we had a pretty cool school. Adam Jones. I'm going to get more current, a little more current. Who's this? Radiohead. Radiohead, fantastic band. All right, now I'm going to try to get a few of the younger people in the audience. Taylor Swift, right? Would we get Taylor Swift? And I thought I would be the only presenter to have Taylor Swift on my slides today, and the very first guy gets up and puts up Taylor Swift and trumps me. And last but not least, I'll go as current as I can get, Billie Eilish, right? So again, so my son's a musician, and so I have lots of discussions with him because he had to decide between computer science or going into music for university. He chose music. And I talk about the intersection of these things and like, what do you think about creativity? And I'm still a believer that, gosh, as much as we can see AI doing some really cool stuff here, I just don't see AI creating the next generation of music for us. I think there's another aspect to this. There's a lot of stuff that is not captured on the internet or from other people's music. There's something called soul. There's something called just thoughts and feelings. There's all sorts of stuff that is not captured electronically. So that's my existential crisis. And once I got through this piece, I said, okay, now let's get back to your pitch, Eric. Let's get back to something that makes sense to these people. So thank you for at least going down that journey with me. I created a lot of questions for myself. I don't know if I've answered them, but I'm starting to come at peace with where the lines are drawn, right? All right, so getting back to center, I said, okay, let's get back to, let's talk about the two main types of AI that we deal with today. The one that I know much more about is what is called narrow AI, built for a highly focused set of tasks. So plays chess, recognizes faces, drives cars. Sometimes doesn't drive cars so well, but we're getting there, right? It's task specific. It's supervised learning. It provides predictions. That's why they call it narrow. It's domain specific. And it's more machine-like. So it's something we've been more comfortable with over the last several decades, right? The stuff that was started in 1956, the stuff that our customers are using, the stuff that ClearBlade has been using is more defined in my brain. But this GenAI thing turns it on its head a little bit. So GenAI generates new content, right? We're generating new data resembling the training data. This is why everyone's talking so much about the importance of the right type of training data and removing biases. It does things like write stories, creates images, produces music, right? And I think, it's got creative capabilities. It's pattern recognition, but it's creative. It's unsupervised in its learning. It generates new content. I think that's what makes it so exciting for the press and everyone else. It's adaptable. It's a lot more flexible than this narrow AI stuff we've been working with. It's more human-like. And I love this term because I think that's what's got people all kind of mixed up. It's got me a little mixed up. It's like, gosh, it feels like I'm talking to a person, right? It feels like someone just created this cool image or this cool piece of music. It created a cat running through a jungle with two tails because I asked it to, right? That's wild. Like it's magic. What's the line? Like any sufficient technology is indistinguishable from magic. This is Gen AI. So it creates that content that is often indistinguishable from that produced by humans. This is why we're so enamored with it. But where are we going to be 5 or 10 years from now? Are we going to be kind of, yeah, we get Gen AI now? Is it just because it's new, or does it continue to amaze us? I think that's TBD, right? Let's see where we go. But now I've got two different types of AI. So, okay, how do I work with these? Well, this is where I go back to my roots a little bit and come back home. For folks who've seen me present before, I like to talk about this narrow AI and how we use it in IoT today. So you have a thing, a device, a machine, in this case a pump. And I've got machine data, zeros and ones, hexadecimal, Modbus, bunch of stuff. And I stream that to the edge or the cloud, but I'm going to stream it. I'm going to normalize this data. And I'm going to stream that to go build some sort of narrow AI model. So I'm going to take all this aggregated data. I'm going to build an AI model, and then I'm going to export that and deploy it somewhere. We can put it back on the edge. So now my machine can react and do dynamic inferencing. It'll slow itself down. It'll turn itself off when the right parameters present themselves. So it's a much more advanced way than writing human rules, right? If this, then that. This is more adaptive. But it's a narrow way to use IoT. And we do this today in things like pumps. We do it for electric vehicles. And this is ClearBlade does a bunch of this with our customers. We do it in concert with SAS. SAS is, they're the original analytics and AI company. We're the guys that pump them the data. They ship us back the models. Solar arrays. So we're doing this right here on campus with SAS. Do it for wells, oil wells. With a large oil technology company. We do it for buildings. So this is the AI that we know. Public safety, drones. All right. So this one is familiar to me. We're doing this. Our customers are doing this. But now when I asked Aaron with my 1970s telephone to build in Gen AI into our product. And so this is a different thing. So Aaron and team came back to me and said, here's where we think we want to use Gen AI. We want to use it to improve productivity. Productivity for our customers using our intelligent assets digital twin creation tool, right? And what's interesting about this is we can use the enhanced user experience in a multimodal way. So I can now ingest text data. I can ingest images. I can take audio. I can ingest video. And instead of pointing and clicking around an interface, I can create an outcome. So enhanced user interaction. So, a lot of times we just kind of go back to TV and say, what did they do on Star Trek? And if it's good for Star Trek, it's good for ClearBlade. So we create an interface like that. Content creation. I can now enhance the data that I'm getting from my machines and enrich that data with additional content. Personalization. I can now react differently to my user. I can customize the way that I interact with Eric or Aaron or Danielle or Dan. Accessibility. Again, I can personalize that interaction because if I'm colorblind or if I've got a hearing disability or something else, I can choose the different way to interact with that person in a way that's more natural to them. Device integration. This one is fascinating to me because if I can now start to ingest the manuals of these pieces of equipment and include that in my GenAI model, I can create the digital twin, but I can also now connect to that thing in real life. And then you start getting into more advanced things like innovative applications like augmented reality, virtual reality. I could see all these things happening in relatively short period of time. So here's where we decided to use GenAI within the context of what we do. So we launched this capability just in April, and I'm going to do a quick little video demo and talk through it, and this is how we use it in our product. This is our Intelligent Assets product. And we're going to open up a chat window. There's our AI assistant. And we're going to create some new items, new digital twins. We call them assets. And in this case, what type of asset? Well, we're going to create a whole new type of asset. And we're going to create some cars, I believe. And great. And our GenAI assistant's going to come back and say, what label do you want to give these cars? Well, they're going to be police cars. So police car is going to go in, and it's going to come back and say, fantastic, I know what a police car is. Typically, this is what you want to measure for this car. Speed, fuel level, engine temp, tire pressure, location. And the user here in this case said, I'd like to add speed, location, and fuel level. Great. Our little assistant goes off, does its thinking, says, great, I'm going to do this. Would you like to create any police car assets at this time? Yes. And they're going to create 10 of them. Perfect. How are you going to tag these things? So you want to use the default naming system. We're going to do it. And it's going to prompt us all the way through. And then it's great. Here's what I'm going to do. Do you want to confirm this is what you want to create within your Intelligent Assets software? And we'll go yes. And I think that's the end of that piece. Then there's my 10 police cars. Now, what I just showed you probably doesn't look that magical. It looks like ChatGPT, but it's in the context of our software. And this, what we just saw us go through here, would have taken 20, 30 minutes for me to click around in all the dialog boxes and create those assets. In this case, I could just type it into a chat window. And trust me, the second that engineering gave me the chance to get my hands on this, I just started using it all over the place. Like, this is so great, right? It's magic. All right. And I'm going to skip this one if I can. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about other use cases as I wrap up here. So I started thinking about other things that we could do this with. So personalization and adaptive learning. So again, I always go to the smart home because the smart home is not smart. Anytime I do my lights or I want to do my stereo or my TV, nothing, it works for a little bit and then it all falls apart. I want to be able to sit in my house and say, you know, turn on Curb Your Enthusiasm, cook me, some spaghetti, and dim the lights. And I want it all to work. Again, Star Trek-like. I think we'll start to get there in the next few years. Scenario and simulation testing, right? I've got an event. I want to do some testing on what happens if. Enhanced security protocols. This is interesting to me. I read up on this. So instead of using well-known security protocols or well-known protocols or how you communicate, what if I created my own secret language for my devices to talk to one another? So that would prevent someone hacking into a system. That's a possibility going forward. Complex systems optimization. So I want to do routing, multimodal routing of supply chain and so forth. Real-time data synthesis. So now I can start to synthesize data as it comes in real time and do other interesting things with it. So these are all other use cases where we can start to apply GenAI over the years. And last but not least is intelligent infrastructure. This is an area where we work, and there's a lot of talk today about critical infrastructure. How do we work with roadways? How do we work with water? How do we work with electricity? You saw Guy Merritt up here talk about energy grid stuff. We're doing some stuff with public safety. This is all in the aspect of intelligent infrastructure. We've been talking about smart cities for decades, but we're really not close to there yet because it's such a complex problem. This should get us further down the path of starting to have a common playing field for connecting all sorts of different types of systems in a more meaningful way. All right, so I didn't leave any time for questions, but hopefully you found this interesting. Thank you for at least indulging me to go through my brain journey, because it did take me a while to get to this end point. Meanwhile, while my team was doing productive work, I was sitting there thinking of other things. So again, thanks for your time and listening today. And again, I'm learning so much from each of you. It's just a pleasure to be here. So thanks again.